Okay. Let's call to order the Narragansett Town Council regular meeting. Today is Monday, July 17th. The time is 6:30. First, we have the executive session. Do I have a motion to retire to executive session of the Town Council in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 42-46-5A2 to discuss litigation, specifically the settlement proposal in the appellate matter of BTRI Saconnet Boulevard Investments, LLC et al. Versus the Town of Narragansett et al. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
You have to
Aye.
state your name.
Oh, Stephen Ferrandi, aye. Excuse me.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Deb Kopeck, aye.
Eva Jarzynski, aye. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopeck. Motion passes 4-0 to retire to executive session. We'll be back when we conclude our executive session. Okay, we're going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council regular meeting. Today is Monday, July 17th. The time is 7 p.m. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so for the disclosure, we had an executive session meeting for the disclosure of session votes. We had a vote to appoint Heidi Patrone as the pro tem clerk. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopak. Motion passed 4-0. Next, we had a motion to seal the minutes. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopak. Motion passed 4-0. And then a motion to exit executive session and reconvene an open meeting. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Ferrandi. Motion passes 4-0. So next, we will move on to the approval of minutes. We have a motion to accept and place on file the minutes from the May 15th, 2023 regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopak. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have a motion to accept and place on file the minutes from the June 5th, 2023 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopak. Motion passes 4-0. Next is a motion to accept and place on file the minutes from the June 5th, 2023 executive session meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopak. Motion passes 4-0.
Eva, excuse me. I think at this point you need to swear Heidi in as the clerk pro tem for the open
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, so now we will swear our pro tem town clerk as our clerk for the evening. So, Mark?
I think you just need to somebody needs to make a
Oh,
motion.
a motion to swear in. Okay, sorry about that.
Motion to swear in the town clerk.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopak. Motion to swear Heidi Patrone as the town clerk passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, next on the agenda, it is time for the open forum public comment portion of the meeting. Again, open forum public comment is a time for any member of the public to speak on a topic not on the meeting agenda. A sign-in sheet is available to members of the public who wish to speak during open forum public comment and located at the table in the back of the council chambers. Speakers will be called in the order as they appear in the sign-in sheet. Before open forum public comment is closed, members of the public who did not sign up will be given the chance to speak. Speaking in a meeting during open forum public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Speakers are required to state their name and address before speaking and are expected to conduct themselves in an orderly and respectful fashion. The comments of citizens accessing this portion of the meeting are neither adopted nor endorsed by the body, but heard as requested.
Council President, did you want to have Jim do his report first? Or?
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
So we're not doing that today.
It is, but that's okay.
No, usually we state it on there.
Okay.
So we're just going to wait for anyone signed up.
No worries.
Okay, actually, no. So we do have on the agenda the town manager's report. So Mr. Tierney, if you would like to address the council with the report.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Just a few items. The men's summer league basketball will be playing at the Boone Street Playground instead of the indoor facility, which we won't have access to for a couple of weeks. So 4 days in August, August 1st, August 3rd, August 8th, and August 10th. The lighting on Boone Street will be on until probably about 10:15, 10 o'clock for those 4 nights only, so they can have the tournament there. The Human Resources position is being filled. It'll be on the August 7th agenda to offer the position to Ms. Patty Rosa. She served interim and acting as the Human Resources Manager several times, and most recently has demonstrated her skills in this post. The merger will also be a significant cost savings to the town. The position will be evaluated at 6 months and 1-year intervals, as it's not a new position, but it's a combination of 2, and you'll get that on August 7th. I'd like to take this opportunity again to thank our staff for the great job they did setting up, breaking down for the event for the Rhode Island Philharmonic. DPW, Parks and Recreation, Police and Fire, they did a great job to make this a safe, fun, community event that's become a tradition in Narragansett for decades. Thank you all for your hard work and sustained efforts every day, not just for the Rhode Island Philharmonic. The dog park RFP, we're still in the process of finalizing the dog park request for proposals. This would not commit the town to anything. It simply would provide design and construction costs that the town council can take under consideration if you so desire. We have 2 new police recruits starting the police academy on July 31st. They're great candidates, and we wish them success at the academy. Matthew Jankura and Andrew Mancini. They would be officers 42 and 43, bringing the department up to full complement if we don't have any retirements. And last week, the sound system had a malfunction at the beach on the north end. We have a vendor coming tomorrow to fix that. In the meantime, the lifeguards have bullhorns at that end of the beach where they can make the announcements that they receive over the radio. And also at the beach, they have vinegar, just in case people have been reading about the Portuguese man o' was, to take the sting out. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tierney. Okay, so next for public comment, Mr. Tierney, who's the first? Do we have any individuals who signed up to speak tonight?
Bruce Andrews.
Okay. So this is to speak on any agenda item that is not, any agenda item that's not on this. So if anyone's here to speak on the ordinance, this is not the time to do it. So that will be during the public comment. We don't have a sign-up sheet for that. So this is just anything that is not on the current agenda. Anyone else signed up?
Richard Vandermarsh.
Mr. Vandermeesh.
Hi, my name is Richard Vandermarsh. I live at 55 Osceola Avenue in Narragansett. And while I'm a member of the Narragansett Town Finance Committee, I am speaking for myself and not the committee. We haven't really discussed this issue. In my belief, our current financial status worries me deeply. I believe that with the continuation of our spending pattern, we have about a 10 to 30% chance of a severe financial liquidity crisis within the next few years. And in accounting, there is a requirement to tell people, is a crisis never going to happen? Are the chances remote? Are they reasonably possible, or are they probable? We are at the reasonably possible stage. We oftentimes confuse ourselves with the federal government. As you know, we can't spend money beyond cash. We don't have the ability, like the federal government, to draw funds. The state limits our ability to raise taxes. Now, all right. The town council needs to study this financial crisis possibility to stop this trend. 3 minutes is not enough time to discuss this any further because there are solutions. However, we must stop making all sorts of financial commitments that aren't in the budget. We must get some behavior changes to control our urge to spend.
Evan Morrill.
Thank
Ordinance. Dr. Al Alba.
Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. In memory of my dad, Al Alba Sr. He's up here many times. Thanks for inspiring me, Dad. Recently, I came across, I haven't been able to make the meetings because I cannot make it many times at the 7 o'clock. I hope that the council will allow people who can't make it at 7 o'clock to show up at the end of the meeting and present an open forum. We should have full transparency. I know there was many comments and criticisms about a prior town council having the meeting open forums at the end. As you know, I spoke up many times on behalf of Galilee. It seems like we stopped making that a street-level parking lot. So therefore, my advocacy and many others, if I were not able to speak here, we might have a street-level parking lot at this time. So I hope that you strongly consider allowing me and anyone else who cannot make it at 7 o'clock to speak at the end of the meetings, because we want transparency. We vote people in who want transparency, not covering up or trying to not have us speak. I hope that's not too much to ask. Thank you. On another note, we have the beach carrying capacity study. I read in the Narragansett Times that that was supported by the town council. And I've been taking video almost daily at the Narragansett Town Beach. People have been thanking me. Thanks for showing that we are not overcrowded. Why are we having a carrying capacity study? What is the premise of it is false. It's really sad, as we said, $140,000, Professor, we're spending on this study, and yet there's no need. Why do we spend money like this? I was involved with the beach capacity, not a beach capacity study, but I was involved with surveys for the University of Rhode Island. And nothing to do with beach capacity. In fact, when I did these surveys every day at the beach, and when the beaches were much more crowded than they are now, there's been never issues of safety or any other issue which is stated in the reasoning behind this study. So I strongly recommend if you can get rid of this study and stop it, don't go through with it. We can reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers. We can reach out to the Graduate School of Oceanography. The research is there. If they do not feel it's valid and worthwhile, then let's not do that study. On another note, I want to share this with James Chaney. I know he gave us an update. We have RIDEM lawyer, Bill Laundrie. He's representing the RIDEM. He's with Bliss and Kavanaugh. We also have a court docket number, WC 23118. The town of Narragansett has Christian Zangotti. I was surprised we were not informed about this town manager. That he's representing the town of Narragansett. This is very important to know. We need to know what's going on in Galilee. We don't want to have a street-level parking. And finally, Procasenti lawyers are his lawyer is John Tarantino, who is going to be fighting. Okay?
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Alba.
Thank you.
Next,
Jeff Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell.
Oh,
Oh, so next,
Joseph Franchina. Okay.
next.
Ally F. Okay. And George Nunes.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Okay. Ms. Celeberto, if you'd like to come up and speak.
Catherine Celeberto, 48 Earls Court. I'm concerned about the unfettered videotaping and picture taking on the beach. I know this is a single consent state.
Could you speak up a little bit? It's hard. Could you speak up a little bit? Yep, thank you.
Where did you speak, Alan? I heard you in Toledo. I'm concerned about the unfettered video taken and picture taking on the beach. This is a single consent state. I know that, and the person the single consenter could be the person taking the video. And I know that on a beach, you don't have an unreasonable expectation of privacy, but there has to be some limits. We have a no drone policy, and there's a reason for that. I was at the last recreational board meeting, and I was surprised to learn that there have been complaints in the past, including one in the shower room. This really concerns me. I think that the town and the beach has to come up with something that's a middle-of-the-road situation where we do have some policy about video taking and picture taking, maybe just the people you're with or whatever. We have every right to do this. You have the right, and you have the obligation, really, to protect people, especially children. You know, these videos go out on Facebook. If you worked in my job for 30 years that I worked in, you'd know these people are very devious. They can make money from anything. So, like I said, I would prefer that the town addresses this in some way sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on. Oh, Mr. Schofield? Thank you. I have.
Good evening, Harry Schofield, 9 Atlantic Avenue. I attended the beach conference, the beach concert, Saturday night. And, first of all, to echo Jim, kudos to the town for the wonderful job it does in putting that on. It's safe. It's an unbelievable event. And everyone associated with it, fire, police, town staff, whoever, does a great job. So kudos. But I do want to issue a constructive criticism, and that is that this year, for the first time, when I went down there with my neighbors, half of the north lot was blocked off for VIP. And I think there's just something intrinsically wrong with that. I don't personally believe the town should be selling VIP passes. And it seems to me that, I don't know the details, the number of them issued to Citizens Bank as a sponsor is way over the top. It seems to me that the North Pavilion should primarily be preserved for Narragansett residents who want to attend the conference, the concert. So I think when I've never seen that before. I've been to 45 or 47 years of these concerts. So I've been to many, and I've never seen that. So I think that's a disservice to the residents who this concert is really for, and the town should consider that its first priority is to give residents all the parking spaces they need. Again, it's a wonderful event. The town does a great job, and I hope you consider this as a constructive criticism for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no comments. Next we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Sorry, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-0. Next, moving on to new business from the Finance Department. We have a motion to approve the request to fill the vacancy of tax collector and any potential vacancies created through internal candidates. So motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-0. Next, from the Parks and Recreation Department, we have a motion to award the RFP for paddle sports business concession to the highest paying bidder, Narrow River Kayaks LLC, with payments to the town of $4,500 for year 1, partial season, $17,000 year 2, $19,000 year 3, and $22,000 year 4, for a total payment to the town of $62,500.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion from the council? Councilor Lawler?
Yep, I would like to talk about this a little bit. I
Jill,
know.
excuse me one second. I don't know that you took a vote on that, Eva.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Sorry about that.
I just wanted to raise the conversation with my colleagues here. Price is significantly lower. It's about half of what they have been paying over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. So I'm wondering if there might be some consideration from the council to perhaps Yarra River was the only bidder for this year, the calendar year of 2023, to perhaps accept their bid so we can have the kayak operation operating this summer, but then to take the good bid and go back out to bid and maybe even widen the scope of the bid itself to potentially get additional bidders. I also, Eva was kind to have forwarded a document from the Land Trust, and I know they're also concerned with the finance portion because they do have the Middlebridge Enterprise Fund, and they are looking at some improvements with the Middlebridge property. So they were concerned with the reduction of the price. So just wanted to throw it out there to see if anybody else would want to consider that as well.
Any other council members wishing to comment? Councilor Kopech?
I'm just thinking that I'd really like to know what transpired here, because I just don't. So, how did this come about? I know there were two previous RFPs, and this one, it is very different from what we've had in the past. So if we could just get an explanation of how this was determined, that would be helpful.
Mr. Tierney?
The RFP went out, the first one went out, and we received two bids. We received no bids, but two parties said that they were interested, but they never bid for it. We put the bid out again after I advised the council of the results, and we solicited and invited other vendors to reply to the second RFP. We received no responses from any of them. So that's twice we received nothing. I advised the council of that, and then we went out for a third RFP, dropping the minimum cost to see what we get in response. And the council's under no obligation to approve it. It was an RFP, and this is what they responded with. That's how we got where we are.
Councilor Ferrandi, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Durinsky. It's kind of strange what's happened here. I mean, in previous years, I know the bid was, I believe, $32,000 per year or thereabouts for several years in a row. I'm kind of looking at this like, well, you have to wonder, is it no money in the kayak renting business, or is it, a matter of help that whoever the people that, there's actually two bidders here that want it, just, they can't do it this year? Or is it a situation where, they're just going to bid as low as they can because there's only two bidders? So I'm a little uneasy at accepting the whole 3 years at the lower amounts. I don't know if there's some kind of financial issue that can be brought out, but it is kind of low for $4,500 just for year one. Now, I guess April, May, June, so probably halfway into it. But if we would have got the normal $30,000, I guess, which was the last bid, that would have been a little higher than $4,500, I assume. So I'm a little hesitant to say, okay, let's try it to get the place back open for the season, and then maybe next year we'll offer the bid for the same thing, the 3 years, but try to go out a little bit further and get at it earlier to see if we can get some more interest. It's either that or we're forced to take a loss of, whatever it is, 17 the second year, 19, and a total of 62,005, and maybe that's all the market will bear. I don't know. It seems that way, but so I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. But I'd be a little bit hesitant to offer the second three bids for the 3 years at the lower end, and for the sake of having something available for the residents, even though it is at the lower price, I might be interested in maybe for just the first year alone, and then in March or whenever we're going to open this up, go at it a little bit differently, maybe try to reach out a little more.
Okay. So just circling back to myself, I know that this bid there were bids on it like many years ago, and we did take the lower bidder. It's a local individual, and the pricing has not gone up, and the recommendation was made by Parks and Recs to increase it by a few $1,000s. We didn't get the bid. I had reservations about the way that this bid process played out. I think it's below value. Currently, I think right now we're into the season. I'd be willing to forego the $4,500 and just like reassess the bid going forward and then see if there's something else we could do with that property as well. So again, this motion is to award the RFP as is. If anyone would like to, any of the council members would like to amend the motion, or we could just vote on it as is, and then whether it moves forward or fails, then we can reassess it. But right now, as the current motion is, that this is for a 4-year contract totaling $62,500, which is significantly lower than previous. And I know the Land Trust does use that funding to help with the Middle Bridge. So this kind of, we did get an email from the Land Trust, and they were concerned about the fact that they were not made aware and that it is a lot lower. So we could also table this and then continue the conversations at a later date. So it's up to my council members.
Eva, I have 2 questions, if that's okay. This program, is there any cost to the town for whatever we might have to do in relation to this program in terms of, I don't know, engagement from the police, something to do with DPW? Do we do
No.
anything? Okay, that's good. The other question that I have is the program that Narrow River Kayaks would be bringing in, is it the exact same program that they had before?
I believe it'll be less aggressive, but that's the way it reads. It's not as aggressive, not as many.
I mean, they started with this other program that they were going to do in West Kingston. So is that kind of what they're going to be doing? Same thing as that? Because that is less involved.
Yeah, the response was that they would be doing a smaller operation. And obviously for the first year, an abbreviated season, but a smaller operation than the original one, correct?
So that's a little different.
So I'd like to offer a change to the motion to allow Narrow River Kayaks to award them just for the calendar year of 2023, this summer season, and then have it go back out to bid with a potentially wider scope envelope to see if there might be interest beyond a kayak operation. But I do know that there are many events planned by Narrow River Foundation that involve the kayak operation area, so I think it'd be good to have it for this summer.
Okay, so their motion is to amend for this year only. So I have a motion by Councilor Lawler. Do I have a second?
Second.
It was 2 years, right?
No, just for the
Just for
calendar
this
year
one
of this
year.
1 year.
We won't do it.
All right, all in favor?
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay, so second, motion by Councilor Lawler for this year, second by Councilor Ferrandi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
All opposed?
Yeah.
No. So motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Ferrandi. Motion fails 2-2. So next, we will move on to the public forum, public hearing part of the meeting. Time is 7:29. So we have a motion to, well, we can wait a minute, I guess, to make it official. I'll just wait a minute, only because it was advertised for 7:30. And you're ready to go? Okay. Okay, so the time is now 7:30. We're ready for the public hearing portion of our meeting. Next, we have a motion to schedule a public hearing acting as the Urban Renewal Board of Review on a request from 23 Pier Narragansett LLC, doing business as Agave Social Restaurant, to amend the previously approved site use plan at 23 Pier Marketplace and refer the request to Planning Board of Review. And the date is, the recommended date is September 5th, 2023. So I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have a motion to schedule a public hearing on the application of 23 Pier Narragansett LLC, doing business as Agave Social Restaurant for a new Class B victualler alcoholic beverage license at Assessor's Plat C-181-1A, 23 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island, with a recommended date of September 5th, 2023. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next up is a motion to open and hold a public hearing on the ordinance and amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, specifically text revisions of Section 2.2, definitions, and a new Section 7.21, student-occupied dwellings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. And again, this is the ordinance that has come before the council, previous councils 2 other times. It's coming back because of procedural issues that were identified, not because the constitutionality of this ordinance. So this is why we're coming. It's a public hearing, so we will hear anyone wishing to speak. Do any council members want to speak initially on this ordinance or go to the public? Okay, so we'll go to the public. Do we have a list? We don't have a list. Okay. Anyone wishing to speak, just raise your hand. I don't know everyone's names, but is that DeSimone? Mr. DeSimone? Okay. Just state your name and address, please.
Thank you, councilors.
Yeah, we have to swear. Do you want to, Mr. Davis, are you going to swear everyone in, or are you going to, okay, yes, please.
Yes, I do. Yes, Douglas R. D. Simone, D-E, capital S-I-M-O-N-E, 25 Bluff Hill Cove Farm Road, Narragansett. Bluff, B-L-U-F-F, Hill Cove Farm Road, Narragansett. Thank you, councilors. Just as an aside before we start, I think your motion was to open and close. I defer to your solicitor, but maybe...
No, it's open and hold. We're not closing it.
Open and hold.
Yes.
I thought I heard the word
Hold.
close.
I know it's the
Good
fans.
for you. Okay, great. And also, just for the record, I think the council should know that I am a landlord. I own a house at 25 Laura Lane. It contains 4 bedrooms, and it is rented and has been rented for the last 3 years to college students in the winter. I would also let you know that the income from that is insignificant to my total income. It's not a significant source of my income. I want to applaud you again for taking up this issue. Any landlord in this town who wants to think that there's not a problem is either kidding himself or has got his head in the sand. We have a problem. The question is how to address this problem. Your planning board has made a recommendation to you. I'd urge you to follow it. The question becomes, what will happen should you enact this ordinance? I would suggest to you, and this is not based on any study, I don't think the town has conducted any, but what happens is in real estate, and I like to think I know a little bit about it, is it's driven by supply and demand, okay? The demand for student rentals is not going to change. There's so many kids out there who need a place to live, and they want to be in Narragansett. We all know why they want to be here. I'm not going to tell you why. We know it. So now we're limiting the availability of dwelling units. Whether you call them dwelling units or bedrooms, you're shortening supply. When you lessen supply and demand stays static, what happens? Rents go up, and the supply chain changes. What you're going to find is you're going to find that houses are going to be being rented in neighborhoods where they were not previously rented, because those kids still need a place to live. The rents are going to go up, and you'll find people renting in neighborhoods that they didn't rent before. Hopefully, that doesn't cause us problems. It might. It might. Let's hope it doesn't. So, how do we really address the problem? Do we address it by continually encouraging, and I'm going to use the word encouraging landlords to take action? Some might say punishing landlords. The reality is, landlords' hands are tied. The landlords are subject to the Rhode Island Landlord and Tenant Act. And the students are provided the same protection as any other tenant in the state of Rhode Island under the Landlord and Tenant Act. A landlord with a tenant who violates the terms of his lease by, let's say, causing a nuisance, cannot be evicted quickly. The eviction process would take at least 9 months, maybe a year, so long as that tenant pays his rent. Now, I'm going to assure you, these kids today, they're bright kids. They know the law. They're not going to be pushed around. And their parents know the law. So the landlord is caught in a situation which he doesn't enjoy or she doesn't enjoy because they're powerless. So how do we fix this problem? Do we fix it by increasing demand, shortening supply, or do we fix it by addressing the problem where it exists? My philosophy has always been, when addressing a problem, look at it in its most simplistic view. Simplistically, the problem is we have a community that sometimes does not respect its neighbors. It exists. All landlords ought to recognize that it exists. How do we address it? We address it by fixing the problem, by empowering landlords so that the actors can have consequences to their action. What should those consequences be? They should be financial. We have set up a system where we've got financial consequences for the wrong party. You've got financial consequences for the landlords. And there are some landlords that own many, 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 many houses. I'm not one of those. But you're not solving the problem. The way to solve the problem is to work with your legislators. You are creatures of the legislature. You only have those powers which the legislature gives you. There are other communities that share the same problems, Providence and Newport. I'm willing to suggest to you that if you get together with the counselors from Providence and Newport and find a way to address the problem, to solve the problem, and make consequences for the bad actors, you'll solve this problem. If these tenants who cause these disruptions know that there are financial consequences. Under Rhode Island law, a landlord cannot collect rent in advance, more than a month. Can't do it. It's illegal. If you were able to amend the Landlord and Tenant Act or create a new act with the help of Providence and Newport, other similarly situated communities, and create an act that recognizes that academic rentals are not the same as year-to-year rentals. They're not the same as month-to-month rentals. They are completely and totally dissimilar. And draft that act in such a fashion to provide consequences to the bad action. If you do that, you'll solve the problem. Now, I understand the desire, because this has been going on for, what, 3, 4, 5 years, to get this passed. I get it. You've got a blueprint for its passage now. It's been laid out for you. But no one has still thought about whether or not this is going to solve the problem. I would encourage you to pay attention to the planning board recommendation. I think 3 is draconian. 4 is mentioned several times in our comprehensive land use plan. It seems to be consistent. I think you're risking, in passage of this, another lawsuit challenging it for compliance with the comp plan. Why go through that? I encourage one of you to have the courage to make an amendment, move this to 4. I think 4 is the right number, and don't stop there. Then continue to seek a solution to the problem, because I don't think even 4 is the solution. The solution is preventing the kind of behavior that we've seen in town, and the only way to prevent it is to provide consequences for the behavior. And this isn't providing any consequences at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Germisch?
Okay? Yes. Yeah, Richard, VanGermersch. That's the 9th millionth time I've spelled it. Just a request. I would love to see the new section, this is 721 on the board. It's really difficult to make any intelligent comment without seeing the new section.
Next.
Dr. Alba?
I do. Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. Dr. Al Alba, ALBA. You're welcome. I think we have to look at the situation as, benefits versus non-benefits. And I myself do not feel we're going to have a benefit by imposing a restriction of only 3 students. In fact, I think it's going to create a problem. We have so many houses available, and we have so many students, the demand for more rentals is going to go up. So people who might not have wanted to sell their property, now it's going to be in more demand, so those prices are going to go up, and you might even have more rentals than before. But not only that, is enforceability. If we all can look at the Venmo, if you go to any of the rental sites, you will see summer rentals with 7, 8, 9, 10, 3 bedrooms houses fits 10 people in a 3-bedroom house. Instead of having an overcapacity study for the beach, I think we should have an overcapacity study on houses that were meant to have 2, 3, or 4 people, will now have 10 or 12 people in it, which is taxing our sewer systems and could potentially harm our waters, both our oceans and our drinking water. This is a documented fact. So if people are speeding on a highway and we say, well, we're going to just stop the people who are college students, but we're going to let everyone else get a pass. Is that right? Of course not. We have the fair housing laws. Anyone who's in real estate, which I know Jill is an outstanding real estate agent, is well versed on fair housing. And the fair housing has protected classes. You cannot discriminate based on race, creed, sexual orientation, gender. Well, why then are we pointing the finger at college students? If anything, college students should be applauded for going to school. I had a rental for many years. I only rented it out twice to students because I usually rented it out year-round. But believe it or not, I had more problems sometimes with some of the people who are professionals renting it year-round. I never had any issues with the college students. They respected me. What I would do is I would take those 4 kids or 3 kids, I would go introduce them to every single neighbor on that street. I will have them give their names, give their telephone numbers, and I would let them know that every single neighbor has my cell phone. And if there are any issues, to reach out to me. And I would meet with their parents. And I would speak with their advisors. I would get their advisors' names. If we have a system of checks and balances, if people do their due diligence, and if people who do not, when you see these dorm-sized houses, before we had the bulk zoning ordinance, we had a 5-bedroom, 8-bedroom house built in a 2, 3-bedroom neighborhood. Well, whose fault is that? But even though it's that big, we should not allow more than 4 people to be in that house at any time. We have an ordinance in place, 4 and no more, but we're not enforcing it. Are we hypocrites? Do we allow some people to do something and then others to not do another? I would also be interested in seeing Providence. I haven't gotten the statistics, but out of all the rentals there, how many kids actually got called to the carpet? How many of them were able to be fined, and what were the consequences? Just to put a new law into the books because the Supreme Court said it's a valid law, that doesn't make it right. In Plessy versus Ferguson, okay, we had the Jim Crow laws. It wasn't until 1954 that the Supreme Court ruled that separate facilities are not equal. Integration at all costs. The Supreme Court gets it wrong. The Jim Crow laws required segregation of African Americans. That was wrong. We had internment camps during World War II for the Japanese. Was that right? No. We don't point the finger at a certain cohort of individuals because they had easy prey. I just don't think it's right. I think it's an embarrassment to our town. And just because Providence does it, doesn't make it right. Just because the Supreme Court might have ruled on it, doesn't make it right. The Supreme Court gets it wrong sometimes. We had prohibition sometimes. We had slavery, which was allowed at one time. If we want to do anything, let's enforce the 4 and no more. I would even support hiring another police officer or a couple of police officers or whatever, even if we have to hire a special individual to ensure that our laws are being upheld, then we should do this. But when you go on Venmo or any of these other media sites and you see these one-week rentals that are being rented out for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, and they're overtaxing our sewer systems and our water systems. Is that right? No, it's not. So I would strongly recommend you reconsider. Let's do enforcement. Enforcement 4 and no more across the board. Thank you.
The gentleman in the red hat and the red shirt.
Thanks. I live at 6 Lauderdale Drive here in Narragansett. Been here since, it'll be 20 years this September. The town of Narragansett is not here for the financial benefit of any one group, bottom line. And that's all I'm hearing. They will have to spend more money, they want to make more money. Well, that's not why this town is here. A town is here because residents live here. I mean, that's where it starts. There's certainly nothing wrong with renting, but it must be done in a balanced manner. We've lost that. It's not just enforcement issues, it's called balance. We know the University of Rhode Island is not interested in supporting a balanced Narragansett, because the more students they send here, the less dormitories they have to build. Unless the town of Narragansett wants to go into the dorm business and begin collecting money, maybe that's something that can be done. I understand that happens in some other towns across the nation, where dorms are set up specifically, high-rise dorms, and they're managed and the funds are channeled into the town coffers in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not a businessman, I'm an engineer. But I do know this. I've been here almost 20 years, and what I'm hearing from these individuals before me is that the responsibility to control this is on the residents who live here. That is not the way it should be. That is not the way it should be. I have to call police every year, and I know they want us to do that for our safety, but that's really not my job. This town needs to get a balance and a control on not just student rentals, and I believe the 3-student ordinance is a means. There must be a reason why the 2100 Club and the other landlord groups are so vigorously opposed to this, because they're in it for the money. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I understand why they're in it, but I'm not the one who has to support their finances. And I've heard that again today from the first individual. You know, it's a large percentage of their income. That has nothing to do with me or this town. We need to get our focus where it needs to be. We need to have balance, proportion, and yes, there are issues with infrastructure, water systems, yes, absolutely. But the 3-student ordinance is something that needs to be performed. It's constitutionally appropriate. It didn't happen because I understand a procedural issue, which should not have happened, but it does because we make mistakes. But God willing, that will be changed the next time around as we proceed. But we need to have balance here. We are not a financial institution here for the benefit of one group or 10 groups. That's not why we're here as this town of Narragansett. Thank you very much.
The woman, Smith, is Ms. Friday? Is that, no, that's sorry. That's not-
I do. My name is Elizabeth Patrick, Patrick, 17 Elm Avenue. Elm. Good evening. Thank you very much for holding this forum so we can all come and talk. I have a home on 17 Elm Avenue in Narragansett, and I've owned my home since 2014. And on my street, I think we have 5 student rentals in the off-season. Since I've owned my home, we've had a problem with one house, 1 year. And relatively speaking, that's pretty good. And I have to say, as somebody who is here in the winter, I enjoy having the students around. Our town doesn't feel like a ghost town because we've got kids around. I enjoy Stop and Shop, where I have a great big fully stocked grocery store available to me. I like going to the restaurants that are open in town in the off season, unlike places like Charlestown, where everything closes up. So I think that the students really do provide some kind of a benefit for me, and I see that. And I don't think that at the end of the day, the difference between going from 3 students in a house to, or 4 students to 3 is going to make that much of a difference. They still contribute to our economy, and if we want to do something, why don't we increase the fines that the students have to pay if there is a sticker on their door? Be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
I do. Evan Morrill, Morrill. My name is Evan Morrill. My family and I own Narragansett properties. You say that your goal is to make this a friendlier family town, and your hope is by limiting the number of unrelated or students that a homeowner will be forced or persuaded to rent to a family. Over the last couple of years, have you seen that your theory is not panning out? That your theory is not panning out.
Evan, can you speak more into the microphone?
Sorry. Is that better?
That's much better. Yes.
Perfect. That your theory is not panning out. In fact, it is doing the opposite. The last time the 3-student ordinance was in place, even though it was for a very short time, the rental price skyrocketed overnight. It was the average price before the first round of no more than 3 students was $700 per bedroom. To make up for the lost rents, the range of prices jumped to $1,000 to $1,200 per bedroom. That means a 3-bedroom home is now collecting a minimum of $3,000 per month. Since the last passing of the 3, we have picked up 50-plus homes that used to be yearly family rentals and have transitioned over to academic and summer rentals due to the income. Multiple times a week, I receive calls from couples and families looking for long-term rentals, and with all the options that we have, they are way out of the family's budgets. Another byproduct of the rental increase is the cost of buying a home will keep increasing. The average family is not going to spend $800,000 on a primary home in Narragansett. Most likely, this will be a secondary home. And to offset the mortgage, they will likely have to rent it in the off-season. I am sure you are all thinking, I'm only saying this because it is going to hurt my company. Quite the contrary. This ordinance actually benefits us. The amount of money has actually increased, and we are managing a few hundred less students. This is making my job a whole lot easier. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The gentleman in the back.
I do. Jeff Mitchell, Mitchell. So Jeff Mitchell, 23 Major Arnold. So I've lived in a neighborhood almost 20 years now with multiple student rentals, a lot of 5, 6, 7 kids in a house. And my reality is my house has been vandalized numerous times. I've had my house shot up with paintballs. I've talked in the past to the council about the fact that I've had arrows from a crossbow fired into the side of my house and in my yard, broken bottles, cars blocking my driveway. Been out, and I'm sure a lot of other residents have the same experience at 2 in the morning because you got people in your yard and they're either urinating in the yard. I've had people passed out in my driveway. My experience has been, the noise and the disruption is minor compared to a lot of else what's going on. Amazingly, I have neighbors, more than one, in my neighborhood who in the middle of the night had drunk students trying to break in to their house because they were at the wrong house, trying to kick the door down because they couldn't get in until the police arrived. So it's more than a noise nuisance. It's a quality of life issue and a safety issue in many, many cases. And I know from personal experience, talking to a house with 2 or 3 kids in it is a lot easier than going to a house with 5, 6, or 7 kids. At least with a couple of kids, there's some accountability when you go there. You can actually have a conversation, there's somebody to hold accountable. And the problems I'm telling you about, pretty much almost all of them occurred in the high-capacity houses, not in the rentals that had 2 or 3 kids in it. You go up to a group of 5 or 6 kids in their house, it's not the same conversation. You're talking to a group, you're not talking to individuals, and the way they behave and speak to you is completely different than it would be if they were talking to you one-on-one. There's some kind of safety in numbers, and they behave differently in dealing with you on that. So I think this ordinance, the 3 student, would make a difference. I just think for people, in neighborhoods such as mine, it should be enjoyable to be there more than 3 months of the year. The summertime shouldn't be the only time you can enjoy your house. You should be able to enjoy it just as much in November as you do, during July. Thank you.
Ma'am.
I do. My name is Lynn Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N, 7 Woodruff Street, not Avenue, 7 Woodruff Street. Thank you first and foremost for allowing us to attend this meeting. I've been attending these meetings for approximately 8 of our 23 years in Narragansett, and the conversations have remained similar. Again, I know this is not an easy issue. I am a landlord, and I am in total agreement with 3 students. On a personal level, I would make it 2. But as a community, our community prefers to endorse the concept of 3 students. I actually echo every person in this room this evening because they all had very valid and succinct opinions, and they presented them very well. We have had issues with students, and we have had superior years with students. For the past 8 years, it has been a whirling dervish. We've worked very hard to establish relationships with students, and we've worked very hard to educate our landlords to their responsibilities. We ask our residents if they hear a noise ordinance issue, they are allowed to call the Narragansett Town Police. We've gone through this many times. Our community is having our board meeting July 24th. At that meeting, I will be presenting what the town of Narragansett has decided. I am not a Philadelphia lawyer, so I need from you, what are we doing so we know what we can tell our residents. Thank you very much for your time.
The gentleman, Mr.
Yes, I do. My name is Kevin McKenna. I live at 31 Pleasant Avenue, Narragansett. My name is Kevin McKenna. I live at 31 Pleasant Avenue in Narragansett. I'm here tonight to support the 3 college student ordinance. 44 years ago, my wife and I purchased a home in a beautiful residential neighborhood named Eastwood Look. We loved this area because we could easily walk to the beach or Black Point, or for that matter, even Salt Pond. It was also close to the Scarborough Beach area, where our families had resided for years. At that time, the area was mainly comprised of families that lived in their homes on a year-round basis. Eastwood Look was a close-knit community where neighborhood children attended local schools and participated in town-sponsored sporting leagues. Residents knew their neighbors and watched out for each other. 13 years ago, my wife and I moved away from our home in Eastwood Look. We had lived in this home for approximately 30 years. We raised our family in this home. and experienced a lifetime of beautiful memories in this location. However, over the years, this beautiful family neighborhood had evolved into an off-site URI dormitory location. In 1979, when we moved to Eastwood Look, there were approximately 25% rental homes on our street. In 2010, when we moved away, there were approximately 80% rental units on our street. The typical home at that time housed at least 4 students and 4 cars. Traffic was heavy when students commuted to classes. And the traffic increased during the weekend when students gathered together to socialize. It was not uncommon to have large parties that had to be quieted down by the police. By 2010, I no longer knew the names of many of our neighbors. And I never knew what type of party might be staged during the upcoming weekend. By voting against the student ordinance, you will allow an additional 75 to 100 renters to live in Eastwood Look, and I'm probably being conservative. This is a residential neighborhood that is already saturated with college renters. Council members, picture yourself living in a neighborhood with an additional 75 to 100 college renters. The Tree-College student ordinance will decrease noise, traffic, and the pollution caused by cars commuting to the campus. Furthermore, it's going to decrease water and sewage usage in Narragansett. Lastly, it's going to improve the quality of life for the year-round residents who are being squeezed out of their neighborhoods by landlords more concerned with profits rather than residential family life. Please vote for the Tree-College student ordinance and protect the quality of life in our neighborhoods throughout Narragansett. Thank you.
Anyone else? The gentleman in the back?
I do. Okay, John Hanley, Hanley, 10 Wilderness Drive in Narragansett. Wilderness Drive. So, coming here tonight, another student or forced student or summer people ordinance that we've forgotten the history of how we got here. We got here because greedy landlords buy up the property and have shoved as many kids in there as they can to rent to URI students. Didn't matter how many, didn't matter the impact on the neighborhood. And that still continues today, especially in the summer. I'm 100% supporter of this. And again, this ordinance is really a flow down because we've had ordinances for 20 years that never seem to get through or get enforced or for whatever reason. And it's become ridiculous. You have people, they say, well, we got the 4 student orders. Well, the 4 unrelated ordinance. Well, that came before the 3 student, but the 4 unrelated, everybody was afraid because 2100 Club's taking us to court again. You know, I'm tired of that. You know, the 3 student was supposedly vetted because it was a copy of what happened up in Providence, and it was supposedly vetted 100%, and we would adopt it, and we would finally have some common sense in our neighborhoods. And enough on that. I just want to get in another thing that I'm still waiting for, which is what are we doing about the VRBO stuff? You know, 4th of July, 3-bedroom house across the street, 14 people, drunk from morning till night, climbing on the roof, called the police twice, garbage in the backyard. It's absolutely ridiculous. And people that live here I've been in town over 40 years. People are tired of it. They want some action. They want some enforcement. If we don't have the legal expertise, hire somebody. Thank you.
Anyone else up there wishing to speak? I'll let her go first.
Yes. Allie Finman, Finman. I'm from 19 Apple Hill Road in West Hartford, Connecticut. 19 Apple Hill Road, it's 3 separate words. West Hartford, Connecticut. So as we can see here, me and my friend are, I would say, the only 2 students here to speak. I will be a senior at URI in this coming fall, and I am not only a student, but I'm the Vice President of Risk and Parliamentary Procedure on the Pan-Hellenic Council. Risk and Parliamentary Procedure on the Pan-Hellenic Council, which is the executive board that oversees all of the URI sororities. I know that's a mouthful. You may be asking why I'm here tonight, and in simple terms, it is a part of my job description to be dealing with topics such as this one, as well as a slew of other topics that some people before me have been speaking about. But that's not the only reason why I'm here. I'm not here as a vice president. I am here as a concerned student who is here to gain a college education just like everybody else. I strongly oppose the no more than 3 college student rental ordinance. I've been dealing with this issue for about a year now, and I was notified of this hearing from the connections I have formed with the Narragansett 2100 because of my position that I held last year. The students have not been aware of this meeting tonight, and I don't think it's fair that they do not all have a voice in their housing options for tonight, following tonight's hearing, because us as well as our families are the ones that are paying for the upcoming school years. Before I began my education here at the height of COVID in 2020, I spoke to a lot of friends and peers who were either alumni or current students. The thing that each person had in common was that they spoke about their positive experience with living off campus in Narragansett. The draw of living in the community of Narragansett was one of the deciding factors when I chose to come to URI, even in the height of COVID. After being in lockdown my freshman year, I could not wait to branch out and live in this town that I now call my second home. I am sure that almost every student that lives in this town would honestly say the same exact thing. It made sense a few years ago for the ordinance to be placed because of the virus and because of social distancing. But because of the virus and social distancing, it is now 2023, and it seems that the ordinance is no longer for students' safety, but for the underlying issues that the residents have brought up before me, as well as others. With the passing of this ordinance, there are thousands of students who will be stripped of their only source of housing due to the limited space on campus, which is out of our control. We are scared that if this is in place, we will be forced out of our homes, and where are we supposed to go if this happens, because we don't have any other options. The legally binding lease agreements that were signed for the upcoming school year were finalized after this ordinance was rejected by a judge for the 2nd time last November, which meant that there was no concern about how many people were allowed to live in these homes. I hope that we can work together to come to a solution and create a space to give an opportunity to have the students' voices heard, and that this large percentage of housing for URI students is not eliminated. Because, like I said before, this is the only other option other than living on campus unless Rhode Island residents were to commute. So it's either living off campus or commuting. Living in Narragansett as a URI student is not only the most cost-effective, but it is a privilege, which I understand as well as a lot of people understand. It gives us a positive relationship to grow as students, people, and future leaders like myself. This ordinance, I believe, infringes on our right to do so. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. The gentleman in the front. Oh.
I do. Bruce Andrews, Andrews, 49 Secluded Drive, Narragansett. I wholeheartedly am in favor of the 3-student ordinance. I wish you could get it done and find a way to enforce it. And it's not the town of Narragansett's responsibility to house all these URI students. It isn't. If it's an issue, then URI should be building more dorms. But we shouldn't have to put up with all the stuff that we're putting up with. Thank you very much.
I do. Nathan Goulart, Goulart. I live at 231 Wickham Road, North Kingstown, Rhode Island. I'm a URI student, and I'm the president of the Interfraternal Council at URI. The Interfraternal Council at URI. I'm speaking loosely on behalf of 4,000 plus students coming here today. In the brief bit of research I conducted, it was stated that college rentals disrupt the fabric of the community. However, college rentals have been renting for over 40 years. College students living here for 9 months out of the year, at the very least, for the past half a century, in turn, means we are a part of this community. And if not, we obviously want to be. We do a lot of good for this community, whether it's raising $300,000 for charity this past year, beach cleanups, or donating all of our time to places like Johnny Cake Center and the VFW. By passing this ordinance, this community loses out on thousands of students just trying to make this town a better place in our limited time here in this beautiful state. Thank you.
Mr. Nonis?
I do. George Nonis, N-O-N-I-S, 60 Exeter Boulevard in Narragansett. I'm here to strongly oppose this discriminatory ordinance that will displace 1,200 law-abiding students, 20% of the student population in Narragansett, and negatively impact 800 equally law-abiding property owners and taxpayers. 800 equally law-abiding property owners and taxpayers, 45% of all rental owners, who were granted by the town the ability to rent over the years. This is one of the few ordinances in town which negatively impact so many people. What you often hear from the vocal neighborhood groups are anecdotes as to the reason for supporting this ordinance. What you won't hear from any of them are facts supporting their position. Why? Because the facts don't support their narrative. But don't worry, I have facts to present tonight, facts which support opposing this ordinance. Residents argue that the number of rentals in town are exploding. Homes are primarily owned by large out-of-state investors, slum landlords, that reducing the number of students in a house will reduce the number of parties, that students are creating more nuisance than ever, and even using up all the resources, that students do not contribute to the local economy, and lastly, that this ordinance will somehow make Narragansett affordable for families. Well, the facts don't support that at all. 91% of rental owners own just one rental, 7% own two. To the speaker that spoke first, saying he's not like one of the landlords that own a ton of rentals, well, those people are not in Narragansett. 60% of the owners reside in Rhode Island, with 22% residing in Narragansett. 28% of the owners have been renting for 20-plus years, 22% between 11 and 20 years, and 36% 5 to 10 years. So 50% have been renting for over 10 years, hardly new investors. The number of rentals has remained flat since 2013, although you'll hear the terms rentals are exploding. 75 new rentals will happen in Eastwood Look. Well, we don't see it over the last 10 years. URI student nuisance reports have decreased 48% since 2013, and arrests are down 65%. There's no correlation between the number of students living in a home and the number of nuisances. 40% of nuisance reports were on 3 or less bedrooms.
64% in homes with 4 or fewer bedrooms. That's the facts. That's reality. Students estimate that they spend $4,000 a year locally. That's $28 million to the town's economy. Students use no more resources than if a family lived in the home. Many times you talk about students using up all the resources, more electricity, more water, more sewer. But if you had a family there, that would be the same. In fact, the students aren't there during the day. Families do not move to Narragansett because of the lack of families don't move to Narragansett mainly because of the lack of jobs and the high price of homes, which we all know. The price of homes has little to do with rentals. It has to do with being a coastal community. The average sales price of a home in Narragansett in June was $887,000. In Newport, $763,000. Portsmouth, $760,000. Middletown, $708,000. And Charleston, $630,000. All coastal communities and none family affordable. These facts don't lie. I've asked the council on several occasions what the goal of this ordinance is, which negatively affects so many people. How will the success or failure of this ordinance be measured? I have yet to get an answer. Tonight we heard Narragansett is not responsible to house URI students. URI should build more dorms. Well, for those people that talked about that, the way you do it, it's not URI's problem. It is the state legislator needs to put money in their budget so that dorms can be built. So when we talk to state legislators and ask them, is there money in the budget for dorms? They said, well, no. So guess what? The students have to live somewhere. The choice for this council is a simple one. Oppose this ordinance and continue to work collectively with the police, landlords, URI student leaders, and property managers to educate and enforce the current ordinances. Or approve this ordinance and let Narragansett be recognized as the most discriminatory, less diverse, less inclusive, and more elitist town in Rhode Island. It's a sad state of affairs when you and neighborhood groups determine who can and who cannot live in this town. What group gets banned next? Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Ms. Ziliberto?
I do. Catherine Celeberto, Celeberto, 48 Earls Court. Earls, Earles Court. First, I want to say that I am in receipt of 3 emails that Mr. Nonis sent to his Narragansett 2,100 members. The first one, he's recruiting more members. He states that they just need the money to hire more attorneys. But also in this email, he brags that they have been able to raise the per bedroom monthly rental from $700 to $1,000. And nowhere in that email does he state that it's because of the 3-student ordinance that was passed for such a short time that I can't even imagine how that would be relevant. In the second email, he brags about they've hired a lobbyist, and they're down the State House, and he sends links to testimony. They were down there lobbying the legislators, trying to get a 5 unrelated law passed. That would have impacted about 25 cities and towns in the state, but they don't care. They don't care. It's all about the money. I have his latest email that he read from, and he says that we don't have facts. We just don't have facts. Let me see here. First, of course, he criticizes Mr. Zinsky for being the deciding vote for the 3-student ordinance last time. The fact of the matter is that 3 town council members voted for the 3-student ordinance the last time it was before the town council. He states that, let me see, he calls us, we're vocal residents, and he doesn't want you to blindly listen to our demands. The town council is answerable to its constituents. Our demands are for quality of life and an end to the monetizing of single-family houses. This is the issue in this town. The issue is not noise and trash and kids trying to break in your house and urinate on your lawn. It really isn't. We have 10 extra police officers we've hired for that purpose. We have 10 more police officers than any town our size should have, and they were specifically hired to mitigate the student issues. Later on in this email, he talks about how the nuisance reports are down. Yeah, that's because we have 10 extra police officers that the residents more or less are paying for out of pocket. He's trying to take credit for nuisance being down when the fact of the matter is that it's the extra police officers that have caused this reduction in nuisance. There's so many trigger words in his email, it's laughable at times. He morphs over to, gee, if the residents didn't want Section 8 housing or affordable housing, would you support what the residents want? Well, the Narragansett 2100 must have missed the fact that Narragansett has a housing authority. We have an affordable housing trust. We have subsidized rentals for both the elderly and families. 2 developers of condo complexes were forced to set aside affordable housing, affordable units. We have 1 condo complex that is all for elderly and disabled. I think he missed that message. I guess I'm one of the usual vocal residents who's going to provide a series of mistakes and falsehoods. A series of mistakes and falsehoods. This is from Mr. Nornis's email. We're under oath here, okay? I worked for the court system for a very long time. I'm not going to stand up here and make misstatements or falsehoods. And he claims to have facts why we should allow more students in these houses. And it's not really that they don't want 4. They don't want any limit. That's the bottom line. They don't want any limit. If you asked him right out if he wants a limit, he would tell you no. And that's what this is all about. The problem in town, again, is the monetizing of single-family houses. These houses are not being, these are single-family houses. They're not being sold for their value or their worth. They're being sold for the amount of money they can generate. Every ad is, this house will return $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. There's one now on Zillow, it's a 6-bedroom house. They say, the realtor is saying that it could generate $100,000 in income. A family can't compete with that. You're getting rental owners who are just doing the figuring in their head, and they're saying, I could put 5 kids in there, $1,000 a bedroom times 9. Okay, just using Mr. Nonis's 7,000 students times the $1,000, which was in his email, it comes out to $63 million a year these rental owners are pulling out of these kids. And I don't get it with these kids. I don't know why you kids don't push back, really. I don't know why you don't push back. When they say to you, I want $1,000, you know what you're saying? No. I don't get it. I don't understand why these kids roll over and play dead. You'd never survive in my generation, the Vietnam generation, believe me. If it was you kids trying to stop that war, we'd still be at war. You just, I mean, we can't, I'm really upset about this. Mr. Nonis claims that we have self-serving motives. Frankly, if the number of students are limited and the amount of income these landlords can generate decreases, and we have to, of course, pass another series of ordinances to combine with this 3-student. The fact of the matter is that we're actually hurting ourselves. The value of my house will go down. It will. Will there be more kids in the school system? Yep. And will I have to pay more? Yep. I'm not concerned about that. I'd rather live in a neighborhood where I actually know my neighbors. That's more important to me than how much is my house worth. That's not important, and that's not important to most of the residents in this town. As far as URI not being able to accommodate the students, stop. They aggressively recruit from out of state, and then they can't provide the housing. You know, they just had a $300 million fundraiser. They raised $300 million, not one single cent toward housing. Going to the General Assembly is not necessary. They have the ability to raise money, and they do raise money, but it's just not for the housing. But frankly, if URI can't accommodate its out-of-state students, then you know what's going to happen? More Rhode Island students will have a chance to attend URI, which is heavily subsidized by the Rhode Island taxpayers. Right now, it's a 50-50. Well, if you're applying from out of state and you don't have housing, then I guess you're not going to take the spot, and maybe another Rhode Islander, another Rhode Island student will have the opportunity to attend. I don't recall that it was such a split like this, this 50-50 split. Most of this is URI's fault, it really is. But these people have come in and they're taking advantage of the situation. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Mr. Nonis states that 1,200 students will be displaced, and 1,200 law-abiding students. What Mr. Nonis really means is 1,200 times 1,000 times 9 months is $10 million, $800,000. That's not going to go in their pockets. That's what he really means to say, but he doesn't want to say that. He says there'll be empty bedrooms. If you get control of these rentals, and again, stop artificially raising the prices of these houses, sooner or later families will be able to afford to come into town. Let's see. Mr. Nonis claims that students provide diversity. Okay, this town is mostly white, and so are the students who live here. The students are not providing diversity. What's happening is people from all socioeconomic levels, which used to live in the town, can't anymore because they can't afford it. So we're talking, do you know the minority population in the school went down from, I think was, the minority and low-income population went down from 18% about 5 years ago to 12% now? These people are losing their rentals. People at the lower socioeconomic end usually do rent, but people they're trying to get on the gravy train in plain English. You have to stop the profit motive. If you don't stop the profit motive, interfere with it, it's just going to continue. He says that, he brings up some old issue where I guess somebody had said that when people came to the beach, they wanted to check their backpacks, yada, yada, yada. I don't know why he threw that one in there, I guess except to say that anybody who opposes limits on rentals, we must all be elitists. We're all elitists. In fact, the one town council member that the Narragansett 2100 supported voted against free access for the Narragansett Indian tribe. It's just some of the things he said, number of students, that students use resources and all of that. It's all irrelevant, really. It's all irrelevant. The bottom line is we have to try to get families into this town any way we can. And right now, this town isn't fair for the average person. And I'm saying the average person is like, $75,000, I think the average family income is in this town. We really have to do something in plain English. I live on Earl's Court. I think there are like 11 rentals on that one little street. It's absurd. 5 years ago, I did a look back for the 3 years previous. There were 17 sales on just my little area, Earl's, Archero, Gibson, Westmoreland, Anna Olivo. 17 sales. This is 5 years ago. 17 sales, and 11 went to the rental market. I stood up 5 years ago and said, we're losing our diversity. And we are. We are. It's practically gone, really. He talks about nuisance reports. Again, we have 10 extra police officers. I hope nuisance reports are down. Someone has some explaining to do if they're not. Bottom line is, single-family homes are being used as businesses in residential zones. This is a misuse of a single-family home. When these people pulled permits for these houses, and I'm sure it dates way beyond any of these people, but there's a question, what's going to be the use of the house? And you write residence, personal residence. Sometimes people write second home. Nobody's writing rental. Rental to as many college students as I can squeeze in there. Again, will the rental owners use this 3-student as an excuse to raise the rent? I'm telling you, push back, push back. Don't roll over and play dead. And that's what it comes down to. They'll charge as much as they can. Do you know in the US, student debt is $1.75 trillion. This is absurd. 90% of the kids who go to URI get financial aid of one type or another. I don't know much about financial aid, but I started looking into it. There's this thing called direct loans, which is kind of like a no questions asked thing. I have to really wonder if that's how they're paying their rent. The rental owners want their money up front, too. That's another whole thing. They know when these loans are getting paid, and they want their money up front. I have never heard of anything like this in my life, to tell you the truth. I grew up in Providence, so I never heard of a landlord asking for 5 months up front. Some of the things he says are just, they just don't even make any sense. He says this is a non-existent problem. In 2004, the Rhode Island statewide planning program predicted Narragansett would have 19,028 full-time residents. We have now 14,500. Our own comp plan in 2008 stated that there were, let's see, what was it, 1,700 and I think it was 1,728 in the Narragansett school system. We have 991 now. The school is bleeding students. It's bleeding students because families can't afford to live here. Even with that freebie daycare, last year there were 81 kids. This year it's only 75 kids. I mean, we're giving this stuff away, and we still can't get families to come in because of the initial cost of a house. So at the end of my email, which I'm sure you all read, I asked you to ask yourself, could you afford to buy the house you now live in? Mr. Ferrandi's house, according to Zillow, and this is the measure my attorney used, is $1.3 million. Can you afford $1.3 million to own the house you have now? Ever? Your estimate, you would have to pay $867,600. You need a part-time job. Jill, $835,000 you'd have to come up with to buy the house you own now. Ms. Kopech, you got lucky. It's only $778,900. This is just absurd. It's absurd. Our house, according to Zillow, was valued at $1.2 million. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard in my life, honestly. I'm not sitting there happy that my house is valued at $1.2 million. I know I could get $1.2 million. I'm not going to sell, number one. But number two, that is just, I'm not going to contribute to it. That's what's happening here. The prices are so high, people who never thought they were going to sell, their kids are pressuring them to sell. I've seen it. This is not what we want. We need to try to get back to some semblance of normalcy. So I urge you to pass the 3-student ordinance and not stop there. Thank you.
Yeah. We're actually just going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll resume shortly. Okay, we're going to resume our public hearing. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this ordinance? Ms. Friday?
I do. Thank you. My name is Susan Orban, O-R-B-A-N, and my address is 113 Montauk Road, Narragansett. So I am someone who's generally stayed out of local politics, but the three-student ordinance has been my exception. So much so that I've written 2 letters to the editor in the local papers and testified before you once before on this same topic. I just believe that it is such a very important issue and that our town is at a perilous tipping point. As more and more single-family homes built in single-family neighborhoods are being converted to student rentals, I see our wonderful sense of community being lost, and I fear that it will soon be lost forever. If zoning limitations are not implemented, I urge you to pass the 3-student ordinance to preserve the quality of life for year-round residents. This is not an us and them issue that has been characterized by some of the testimony that we've heard tonight. Students have always been and will always be part of the fabric of this community. This is a density issue that our town can control with the passage of this reasonable ordinance. Why is 3 so important? Well, market rates, as you've heard people talk about, for renting properties for $800 to $1,000 per student per month times 9 months is extremely lucrative. Limiting the number of students to 3 reduces the financial incentive to buy up properties for student rentals during the winter and verbos and other vacation rentals at even higher prices during the summer. It also reduces the noise, crowding, and traffic that comes from renting houses to groups of students of 4 or more. It means having to listen to only 3 students come in late at night and turn their car alarms on, beep, and open their doors, bang, as opposed to 4 or 5 or 6 or more per night. The number of cars in the driveway is reduced to 3 to 6 per night because many times they have friends over, as opposed to 4 to 8 to 5 to 10 to 6 to 12 per night. Circles of friends for gatherings are also reduced. As a planning for a party, if you assume that one resident invites 10 friends, then the circle invitees is limited to 30 as opposed to 40, 50, 60 or more. In my observation around my neighborhood, houses with fewer students also seem to get fewer orange stickers. The ordinance imposes a long overdue regulation on businesses that are operating without limits in designated single-family home residential neighborhoods. I, like many residents, watched with wonder at how the planning board handled the case of NBX bicycle shops moved to a larger location on Boston Neck Road some years ago. At the time, the property, although it was located on a busy commercial strip, was zoned a special residential use. And because of that, to address the concerns of budding neighbors, the planning board stipulated that only a portion of the site could be developed. and that a dense buffer had to be installed and maintained to protect the neighbors. And that if that business was sold, it could only be sold to a business that would not involve intensive use. So it couldn't be a bank or a pharmacy. It had to be a more passive business, like a hair salon, or something along those lines. When they began offering yoga classes, they were limited to 20 participants in the off-season. And the town council acted similarly just recently in considering the license of the Surf Shack B&B and the kitchen at the Shack on Kingstown Road. The owners installed noise indicators to help manage noise to protect the neighbors, and strict limits were placed on the hours of operations of the restaurant so that neighbors would not be disturbed as people were leaving from their dinner to go to their cars. Those of us that live in neighborhoods with students are jealous. We wish that we had similar protections by our town. There are no public hearings when there's a change in use that happens in these single-family neighborhoods where buildings, where homes are converted to student rentals. There's little accountability of landlords for the behavior of their student rentals. We're at a tipping point at this point in the number of unregulated rental housing businesses allowed to operate in a single-family neighborhood. The 3-student ordinance is a common sense, practical compromise to address the density issue. We all know the cautionary tale of Eastward Look. That can be all over Narragansett. And I fear that it's happening in my neighborhood, and that's what my neighborhood is going to look like very soon. The action that you can take can slow down that change and that deterioration of the quality of life in our family neighborhoods. I urge you to pass this student ordinance. I think it's long overdue action on behalf of year-round residents. And I thank you so much for serving on town council and taking this issue up yet again. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Schofield?
I do. Yes, Harold Schofield, Schofield, 9 Atlantic Avenue, Narragansett. Thank you. Good evening. You're all in receipt, of a comprehensive memorandum I sent all of you today on behalf of the Narragansett Peer Residents Association, strongly supporting the passage of this 3-student ordinance again. I think that memorandum speaks for itself in terms of pointing out the rationale for doing so, the fact that it's consistent with the town comprehensive plan, and the fact, as Susan Orban and Catherine Celeberto and others have pointed out, that it strikes a compromise. It should be viewed as a balance to keep neighborhood student densities down to a minimum. As has been said tonight, neighbors, when you live in a neighborhood, you expect to have neighbors. You do not expect to have revolving door dormitories. Now, given the circumstances in this town over decades, we've had to accommodate that, too much of that. But we need to balance it out. And you heard from landlords tonight. You've basically heard them tell you that, well, it's going to raise the prices again for rentals.
You've heard the complaint that landlords are caught in a jam between state and local regulations and trying to run their affairs. Landlords are the victims of their own greed. Landlords in this town for decades. I've lived here since 1976. My daughters in their mid-40s now went to the elementary school. 2 of my grandchildren go to that same school, and as has been pointed out tonight, it's steadily declining. And there are things we can do to save this town. It is not all lost. We can curb this. And the 3-student ordinance is one key way to strike a balance that has been said slowed it down. I want to compliment Catherine for taking Mr. Nonis to task here on the inaccuracies of many of his supposed facts, and I pointed some of those inaccuracies out in my memo to you earlier today. The fact is that it's not the town's responsibility to worry about the affordability or the availability of housing for URI. It is up to URI officials to deal with the state and figure out how to come up with more resident, housing on the campus. And it can't be done on the backs of our residents. We've paid too severe a price for that over decades. You all know many people have been at this microphone describing the horrors of difficult situations with next-door housing, with overstuffed kids, too many cars, too much noise. The 3-student ordinance should be viewed, it's a good balance. As someone who, as I said in the memo, was instrumental in chairing the committee that passed the 4 unrelateds ordinance, that ordinance was only 4 unrelateds because we were told by solicitor at the time and one town council member that don't use the term students. Fortunately, that problem has been solved by the Rhode Island Supreme Court, And so this ordinance is a much more surgical approach to dealing with the problem, a much more easily enforceable approach than 4 unrelateds, because it's not difficult to define who's a student. So it's got all of those attributes. It's unfortunate that we're here for the 3rd time to do it. I have good confidence between the legal counsel and all of you tonight. You'll get this done tonight, once and for all, in a legally bulletproof way. But I mean, it's not a case of perfection that we're looking for here. We're not anti-students. We were all students. But students, as I said in my memorandum to you today, have a different lifestyle than families, particularly families with kids who go to bed early, have to get up in the morning to go to work or school, as opposed to students who are used to staying up late, coming in and out at all hours. And, as the previous speakers have said, the more density there is per house, the more disruption there is. It has nothing to do with parties. This has nothing to do with enforcement and issuance of orange stickers. We have a great police department for that, and as was stated here tonight, we have a much bigger police department because of this that landlords don't pay for. And, the one thing Mr. Nonis won't tell you is that all of his 2,100 members, are running businesses while paying residential tax rates. They are paying the same tax rates as residents that have to put up with the abuse and have put up with this abuse for far too long. It's all over town. It is spreading. In neighborhoods like Eastwood Look and Bonnet Shores are infected with these. And it just needs a focused effort, and I will be the first to say it's not just the student rentals now. We have, as I said in my memo, the double whammy of short-term rentals piling on to this. But Narragansett is a perfect storm for this. Why are there more short-term rentals here by significantly wider margins than any other town in Rhode Island? It's because we're already such a cottage industry for these rentals. 25 years since the DeStefano decision, these things have steadily increased. I completely disagree with Mr. Nonis's characterization that that these things are not increasing. They are increasing. But the bottom line is, this is a good compromise that recognizes that we are going to house students in this town. We are not anti-student. We welcome their presence. Do they contribute to the economy? Yes. Do they single-handedly drive the economy in the winter? No. No, those of us that live here and go to the restaurants in the winter, no, they're full most of the winter. And they're not full with college students. They're filled with people like me who live here and people like you who can afford to go to them. And so it's residents that support the business. Do students help? Sure, great, they help. But again, this is about balance. And I commend you for taking this up again. Let's get it right this time. Vote for the 3-student ordinance. It's a good compromise between accommodating the student situation we have and providing protections that people who live here richly deserve. Thank you.
Mr. Dolan, did you want to speak?
I do. Tom Dolan, 71 Secana Boulevard, Narragansett. D-O-L-A-N. To avoid a little redundancy of the previous speaker, Mr. Schofield, I probably have some of the same interests. I also have been in Eastwood Look, or been in Narragansett for 1976. I've been there when I guess the zoning was 2.5 residents per house. I've had students ask me, how can you live there? These are students asking me how I can live there. And then I would watch TV and hear students from the university say, gee, if they don't like it, why did they move here? Well, when I moved there, it was a residential area. There were parades for the kids. There were opportunities for families to enjoy themselves. Obviously, just like a cancer, people have moved out. And now it is a rental community, I'm sorry to say, but there are still residents there. Now, I'm sorry that I missed the presentation of the landlords. I just had a previous meeting, so I just walked in. And I'm sure that the bleeding hearts came to you of how they bought these $35,000 houses and they maybe put 30,000 in, which was primarily just extra bedrooms, so they can have 6, 7, 8, 9 bedrooms. And God bless them. I think if that's what they feel they should do, let them have their rights. But I think the rights that I'm talking about are the rights of the people that have been there, live there now, as I'm sure some of the other speakers talked about. Now, the university students, are organized during school, and they're lobbying for 5 and 6 and 7 students. And I'm saying what they should be doing, as I've lobbied with both the council here and previous councils, they should be looking for bigger and better housing at the University of Rhode Island. I've explained to you that there's publicly traded companies that will not only build the dorm for the university and the state, they will give them money back. These are enterprises that the university would have nothing to do with, and luckily, the town of Narragansett would have nothing to do with it. As far as rents, I've been involved with real estate from Florida to Maine. I can tell you now, many of the students who are coming from New York, New Jersey, paying $1,200 for a bedroom is not unheard of, whether you go to Boston or you go to New York. This is Narragansett. These kids are tickled pink to pay $1,000 or $1,200, or they're not tickled pink, but their parents are paying for this kind of money. It's not out of the question. So therefore, that's what I was told that they would have to charge if they made it a 3-bedroom zoning. So that being said, if we're not going to go for, housing on the university, if we have to come into it, then yes, I guess I'm in favor of the 3 bedrooms. If not, then these poor souls that are rentals, and they are going to rent to 6, 7, 8, and 9, let those poor business people, give them their due. Let them have 9 and 12 bedrooms. It's only their right. Let them put businesses in the residential houses. And if you do that, then you might as well just give up on all kinds of zoning, whether it be drinking, whether it be public urination, whether it be whatever you want. Because your legacy, if you let stuff like this go on, then it's something you guys will have to live with. And some of them, I mean, I know everyone is entitled to make money. I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket today. But, how much greed can one have with ethics and morality? So my only wish for you guys is do what you think is best, because some of them, I'm not sure if they're doing what they really think is best. Maybe on a financial end of it, they are. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Mrs. Zonferlo?
I do. Paul Zonfrillo, Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle. Thank you. Windward Circle. Yes. I think it's all been said. I am in support of the 3-student ordinance, and I don't think I can add anything to the conversation except my voice that we should pass it tonight. And I guess if you're a Survivor fan, as Jeff Probst might say, it's time to count the votes.
Paul, can you speak into the microphones? Thank you.
I guess it's time to count the votes, as Jeff Probst would say on Survivor. So I am in support of the ordinance. And I'd like to thank Eva, Steve, and Deb for their support of this in the past. I hope that support will continue tonight. I believe it will. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Did you see? I don't see anyone. I don't see anyone from the public wishing to speak. I'm going to go to the council now for comments. I know that, when we first started this, they deferred to let everyone speak first. So I'm going to start with Councilor Ferrandi. I'll go in alphabetical order.
Before we do that, could I ask the town sergeant just survey the chamber and make sure that anyone who wanted to speak, who has not yet spoken tonight, has the opportunity to do so we can make sure everyone who wanted to speak on this matter had that choice. So if you could please just go through and just...
I did wear my glasses.
Thank you, Town Sergeant.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Councilor Ferrandi?
Thank you, Councilor Jazinski. So here we are again. This is the second time tried. This is the 3rd time for another try. I'll be pretty brief. I just want to write down I listened to everybody, and I wrote down some things that I heard, overwhelmingly. I heard the word balance, okay? And you can I'm just going to say the words, and a lot of it was explained. Recent sales in the last 5 years of 67% are now owner-occupied. Non-resident owned, I've heard that quite a bit. We're at a tipping point. There's a density issue. Reasonable ordinance. School population lowering. Town population lowering by the 2020 census. By quite a bit, I believe, almost 8%. Province initiated similar measures to save some of their single-family neighborhoods. Taking rights away. It's not all lost, not anti-student. It's a good compromise, and it's something interesting, parade, so maybe we could have some more. But I think a lot's been said. Previous councils have tried to, get this ordinance, and I think this council should be taking it up and do the same. Thank you.
Councilor Kopech.
Steve said a number of things that I would have said as well. One of the things that I want to point out is we got a phenomenal number of emails on this issue in the past 6 or 7 days. And I read every single one of them. I responded to as many as I could. But some of the stuff that I heard in those emails often from folks who were in agreement with this ordinance, I saw the phrase tipping point a great deal, that people were looking for peace and quiet, and I got some statistics. Reduction in owner-occupied homes has changed by 14% in the last 12 years. The reduction of K through 12 students the percent change is 44% since the year of 2000. This, just indicates that housing is too expensive for people in Narragansett, and one of the reasons is because it's lucrative in terms of its ability to produce revenue through rentals. These things are all important. Then I also heard a lot of points about, the kinds of issues that we heard tonight for people's property when they live near a large number of students. Also, I've heard in the past that, there's just a small group of disapproving individuals in this town. It's just a couple of neighborhoods. And the fact of the matter is that my emails came from Sand Hill Cove, Eastwood Look, the Pier, Bonnet Shores, Briggs Farms, Point Judith, and Metatuxet. That's a pretty broad swath of area in a town the size of Narragansett. So I think those things are very important. I also think it's important to make this point that I can only speak for myself, but I do not want to see no students in Narragansett. Yes, in fact, the young man was correct. We've had students in Narragansett for at least the last 40, possibly 50 years, and I'm old enough to know that. If I had gone to URI, I may have been one of them too. But there's a huge difference between what happened 50 years ago and what's been happening in the last 10 to 15 years. The housing stock is geared towards, towards rentals in a way that it never was when I was a kid, frankly. And so I think the issue isn't, that we don't want students, it's that we have achieved a tipping point, that we have a situation that has to be addressed so that we have community and neighborhoods in this town. And so that's what I'm looking to do. And so I have to say, I have students as neighbors I live in a very small little cul-de-sac, but the fact of the matter is, I don't have a problem with them, but I have seen problems. And I have to deal with what comes before me as a town council member, and I think that that we have to fix the balance, and this is the way that I believe that we should do that. Thank you.
Councilor Lawler.
Thank you to everybody who came and spoke tonight, and I also read every email that came in over the last few days. There's been a lot said tonight, and I agree with a great deal of it, but I wanted to start on a different approach. I really want to talk about the sense of community. We had my neighborhood association meeting about a week ago, and we had a picnic, and there was something that was quite odd at our picnic: young children. It seems that there were 2 families that have moved into Briggs Farm with young children. And you would have thought that we hit the jackpot, but the amount of conversation that took place at that meeting about the fact that we have kids, we're going to have the school bus come down to our neighborhood, the fact that we were talking about a sense of community and bringing kids back and having that balance was overwhelming to me, especially when thinking about coming to here tonight. So I just thought it'd be good just to read some facts into the hearing tonight. And I spoke first to our superintendent. I asked that Dr. Cummings send me the last 10 years of our school population, because community has a lot to do with kids. I mean, we're celebrating these young kids. coming into our neighborhood. So in 2013, there were 79 kindergartners. Today, there are 46. I'm not great at math, but I think that's a 42% reduction. In 2013, there were 93 first graders. Today, there are 55. That's a 41%. In 2013, there were 103 second graders. Today, there are 51. That's 45% reduction. In 2013, in the third grade, there were 100. Today, there are 60, 40% less. In the fourth grade, 107 in 2013. Today, 64, 40% less. 2013, 101. Today, 69, 32% less. In 2013, there were 87. Today, 73, 17% less. In the seventh grade, in 2013, there were 113. Today, 78, 31% less. In 2013, there were 119 eighth graders. Today, there are 78, 34% less. So in 2013, we had a population of school in the elementary school and middle school of 956. Today, we have 655 at a reduction of about 32. Now, I didn't take into consideration the high school population because we have about 106 students from out of district that are coming in to fill those spaces. We're not allowed to do that for elementary and for middle school, but we are able to bring them in. And I believe it was Ms. Alberto who mentioned that she would like to fill the schools. I too would like to fill the schools. If I have more tax dollar going to schools so that I can create more of a community, so it's not just, hey, wow, we have 2 kids moving into the neighborhood, we have 5, we have 10. It's gonna be a slow pace getting up there. But we are at the tipping point, and it has to start someplace. And this is with the start. Now, it was mentioned by the town council president, this is not the first time this is coming before the council, it's the 3rd time. So twice before we had procedural errors. We have yet to hear what Judge Carter has to say about this at all. We don't know her decision. So this is a first approach for it, to have the 3 student, but there are many other things that we need to take a look at. And again, it's for creating a sense of community and quality of life. With listening to what people said today, we heard about short-term rentals as well. So that's something that the council is going to be taking up next. We're looking at it. As a matter of fact, we debated for a great period of time about exactly how to go about it, and we ultimately decided on using a consulting company as well as an attorney-based company to help us come up with how do we work with short-term rentals? How do we do enforcement with short-term rentals? How can we collect the data from all of the databases that we spoke about tonight, VRBO, those that don't have actual street addresses listed? How do we find out where they are? We have a great amount of decisions to make, this council, in the next few months. We need to take a look at the rental registration database. We need to look at that rental form. We need to ask more questions so that we can understand how our neighborhoods are going to be progressing. Like Deb just said, I do not want to get rid of student rentals, but we need a better balance. We need a better balance. We can't continue to have our schools tank, or else we won't have kids. We won't have that sense of community that so many appreciate, including myself. So as far as Mr. Nolan's mentioned, lack of jobs, Narragansett happens to have the ability to have a train station in North Kingstown that can connect you to Boston and to New York. So there can be jobs here that people can't afford to live here. And as far as affordability, as a realtor, over the last few years since the pandemic, it has been appalling to see what has happened. When the pandemic came, we had a gust of out-of-state buyers that came in, and they had cash in their hand. And any time there was a resident of Rhode Island, whether it be Narragansett or not, that was looking to move up from a starting house to a higher part, they were outbid. Some of the contracts that I've seen over the last few years will bid $50,000 over the highest price, will waive inspections, will waive the mortgage, anything. Just make it we just have to have that house. So we have a housing crisis in the state. We have a housing crisis in Narragansett. We have a couple of affordable housing authority committees, but we need to do more than just talk about it. We need to act. And I understand that the rental companies are not going to like this action. I understand that. But please keep in mind, we're not eliminating it. We're just lessening it by one to actually represent a better density so that we can have neighborhoods and we can have that sense of community, which you are a part of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so finally, so the goal of this ordinance is to maintain the residential character of neighborhoods and to promote public health, safety, and general welfare. So there's definitely a legitimate public purpose for the ordinance. There's consistency with Narragansett's adopted comprehensive plan, and there's consistency with other provisions of the Narragansett zoning ordinance. And the focus of this ordinance is on R10, R10A, and R20 zones. And for those of you who don't know what those zones are in the neighborhoods with 1/4 and 1/2 acre lots. And that's the most densely developed neighborhoods in Narragansett. And those are the neighborhoods where neighbors are most likely to be impacted by noise and other disruptions caused by many students living in single-family houses. So the town council believes that with this ordinance, by limiting the number of students that can live in a single-family house, the ordinance will also reduce pressures that have been driving up the price of single-family houses. One goal of this ordinance is to help retain single-family houses as owner-occupied houses or as year-round rentals that provide housing for the town's workforce. So Rhode Island General Laws Section 45-24-50 gives the town council the authority to adopt and amend zoning ordinances consistent with the comprehensive plan. And that's to promote the public health, safety, general welfare, to provide a range of uses and intensities of use for appropriate to the character of the town, reflecting current and future needs. Provide for orderly growth and development, which recognizes the goals and patterns of land use contained in the comprehensive plan, the need to shape and balance urban and rural development, the use of innovative development, regulations, and techniques, and to promote implementation of the comprehensive plan. So specifically, this ordinance manages the intensities of use appropriate to the character of the town, reflecting current and future needs. It manages the intensity of use by students so that they can blend more seamlessly into neighborhoods. This is consistent with other provisions of the Narragansett zoning ordinance, which also manage intensity of use in single-family dwellings. Provides for the control, protection, and/or abatement of noise pollution. The ordinance will reduce the daily impacts of noise that occurs when single-family dwellings are rented to larger number of students. So the comprehensive plan contents, the guiding principles are to maintain local character and uniqueness. So maintaining the look and feel of Narragansett as a coastal community is a very high priority. Its natural coastline, recreational areas, quiet residential neighborhoods, historic districts, and small businesses define Narragansett. Number 2 in guiding principles, enhance the year-round community. The town's year-round population has diminished in the past decade, and many commercial proprietors find it difficult to sustain their businesses because of the highly seasonal community. Encouraging year-round residency will strengthen community spirit and expand the customer base for existing and potentially new businesses, particularly in the non-summer months. One way to do this is to increase the number of available long-term rentals. But potential residents have difficulty finding 12-month rental options. The financial attractiveness of seasonal versus yearly rentals and higher costs of purchasing a home in Narragansett are issues that need to be balanced and are addressed in this plan. Number 5 in guiding principles, recognizing changing demographics. Second, the town's desire to enhance a year-round community also leads to attracting younger individuals and families that are looking for housing they can afford. So let me just circle back to my first point and to my opening statement. The goal of this ordinance is to maintain the residential character of neighborhoods and to promote public health, safety, and general welfare, period. Thank you. So with no other comments tonight, I think everybody was given the opportunity to speak. All our council members have spoken. If anyone else has any last comments from the council, otherwise, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-0. Next up, we have a motion to receive and accept the Planning Board's recommendation in regard to amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, specifically text revisions of Section 2.2, definitions, and a new Section 7.21, student-occupied dwellings. It was a 2-2 vote. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech.
Council President?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to move up item J1 to the top of the agenda. Most of these folks here tonight are here for this vote, so let's bring it on.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Okay. Motion to move the introducing and passing and accepting. Was that J1? I had it as K1.
J1.
I had K1. J1. Okay. Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-0 to move this up. So this is the motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance in amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, specifically text revisions of Section 2.2, definitions, and a new Section 7.21, student-occupied dwellings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Seeing as we've all spoken on this, all the members of the public spoke on this, the council spoke on this, we're going to be taking a vote on this, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-0. Okay, so we're going to be moving back to the last agenda item that we had was the one from Parks and Rec. We're just going to go back to the original motion because the amendment failed. So this is a motion to award the RFP for paddle sports business concession to the highest paying bidder, Narrow River Kayaks LLC, with payments to the town of $4,500 year one, partial season $17,000 year two, $19,000 year three, and $22,000 year four, for a total payment to the town of $62,500.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
So we're in favor of just,
You have to vote on the original motion, so it's a yes, it's an up or down vote. So the amendment failed. It was a 2-2, so then we had to go back to the original motion, which is to approve this as is.
okay, so no.
Okay. No. No?
No.
I'm going to say aye.
Okay, so motion failed. A motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion fails, 1 yes, 3 no's, 1-3. Okay, so next moving to Information Technology Department, it's a motion to approve the renewal of SaaS application services with Tyler Technologies Incorporated in the amount of $90,589.96 for fiscal year 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the annual software maintenance agreement with Vision Government Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $18,174. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the annual renewal of Office 365 Cloud Email and Office with Zones LLC in the total amount of $68,460.60.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next, from the Public Works Department, we have a motion to approve the filling of a vacant foreman's position within the Highway Division at Public Works and any subsequent vacancies that will arise from the filling of this position.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next up from the Engineering Department, we have a motion to refer the request from David Gilmore and Thomas Fairley in regard to Plat 5 Lot 40, 649 Point Judith Road for waiver of the sewer policy to the Sewer Policy Committee for review.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the contract for shelving for the Maury Lunches Memorial Library renovation project with PSI New England Storage Products at their quoted price of $101,532.79.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Jim, I just want
Oh,
one clarification from the town manager. Jim, this change order is not adding on additional money, correct?
No, this, the funding is from the bond money and from the professional services account and the library donation account.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0.
Council President, I think we missed item 1, 2.
I'm sorry?
I think we missed item 1, 2. A motion to permit the
J1.
water storage tanks.
I don't have that.
I think we skipped over that one.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Let's go back to that one.
Yeah.
It's I too.
I too. Thank you.
It's all right. I noticed that myself.
Okay, so I,
Two.
The water tanks.
Yeah.
It's J, right?
J2, so I have it J2, okay.
J2.
Okay, motion to,
Approve, ratify.
where's the,
Approve,
You got
ratify,
it?
confirm.
It's
storage.
well, that's what I was coming up with next.
The
That's
engineering
next.
department.
Yeah, so engineering J2, a motion to approve, ratify, and confirm.
Yeah, It came.
We missed
okay.
that one.
Just, that's fine. Let's just do it.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay, I did. Motion to approve, ratify, and confirm the water storage tanks inspection and interior cleaning by Underwater Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $21,987.
So moved.
Second. Can I just ask one question? This has already happened, right? Am I correct?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be sure.
None from the public. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Wait,
What difference?
was that an aye?
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Next is a motion to approve, ratify, and confirm change order number 4 with E.W. Berman Incorporated for the Maury Luntgens Memorial Library renovation project in the amount of $124,691.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone
Aye.
from the public?
I had
Oh, hold on one second.
Oh,
I'm just waiting, name is Richard Vangermerch, I'm waiting for any example of cash out that has been added, and this may be one. And I just caution the group again that we are in dire financial straits. Our cash balance is shrinking. We keep on adding things with no care about cash. And unless we start caring about cash, we ain't gonna have any.
Thank you. All in favor?
I just said, Jim, this one on the library, it's an additional 124,000. Is that what was put back in their budget from before?
No.
For this change order? On 14?
It is from the bond account. It is.
It is, it's from the bond account.
Yes.
So does that add that amount to the total contract, or will that get reduced at some point through the rest of this, or no, because we added it back in?
Well, the change orders that have been issued, they have the funds are there for it. For instance, as of Friday, there were 144,000 approved change orders for the project, but there were 248 rejected, 248,000 rejected
Right.
by our owner's project manager. So at the beginning of the beginning of this project, I had stated to the council that I'll put these on a regular basis. These are normally just approved.
Moves up and down, right.
They're just approved change orders because they're within the parameters that we can approve them. But because it's a big project, I said we were going to put them on to see them, both the negatives and the positive ones
right.
like we did before.
But these particular ones pertain to what was put back in as far as the painting and the acoustical buffer?
Yes.
This is like the
Yes.
additional part, that's
That
what
is
I
cor-
wanted to know.
That is correct, yep.
So that's gonna make-
The windows, the baffles, the painting.
Yeah, I
yes.
know the other way, there's a change either way, but this was added into their budget from, that's, I guess that gonna be part of the bond now, because we gave them back $105,000, or whatever it was? We had added this back into the budget, into the
Was the ca-
library
you
budget,
mean-
I
Do you mean the
believe.
capital budget, Steve?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's talking about the capital money, Jim.
this was put back into the library fund for these purposes.
I believe that was, yes, at the end of the budget process.
So it's in there now, and it's just, they're just change orders, and then, so we're just approving,
Yeah.
ratifying. So
So-
then we have
So if the whole project is 5.4, this is gonna make an additional
5.8.
5.8, this is gonna make
5.8.
an additional point for that, so,
Well, this, yeah.
if they're
okay.
staying, so everything's like the
We're not
changes-
going over 5.8, don't worry.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was just going to say that's what the council
Just gotta move around.
has stated all along.
All right.
and
Does,
I think.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I understand
Okay.
it now.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor, was it Kopek? I'm sorry, was it Kopek?
Yep.
Okay. Motion passes 4-0. Last on the agenda is a motion to approve the contract extension for the purchase of wastewater chemicals, polymers, and Polydyne Incorporated for a one-year period for polymer Z-Tag 7587 at $1.86 per pound, with polymer Z-Tag 7878 at $603 per 450-pound drum, under the same terms and conditions as the original contract.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 4-0. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?